Greetings and salutations. This is Abe Abdelhadi with The Bitter Truth, where we may not have all the answers, but we're going to ask a hell of a lot of questions. You can be a supporter of the show on patreon.com/The Bitter Truth, where you can become a bitter pill or a spoonful of sugar. We appreciate the support. As always, you can listen to these shows at no charge, but if you are listening to the shows and you enjoy them, price of a latte, you can get some cool swag, and tell your friends that you're actually a spoonful of sugar. Your life is better and you're making a difference. Today, we have a friend of the show back on visiting with us, Raúl Fernández-Berriozábal, and he's a homeless advocate, works with several nonprofits in the San Francisco area. He's an actual activist, boots on the ground type of thing. We're going to get into a lot of some of the things that he has seen, and he's with us today. Raúl, are you there?
I'm here, Abe. Thank you so much for having me in your show again. I appreciate the gesture.
Hey, man, not a problem. It's a joy. It's a joy to have you on. You make me look smart. So there you go.
Thank you. You're too kind.
But hey, man, so some big stuff's happening. I wanted to talk about a couple things, but I wanted to just kind of get your thoughts on the current impeachment inquiry. I mean, obviously they have not voted to impeach yet, but what are your thoughts on some of that?
Well, my quick reaction, my knee-jerk reaction would say that this is like an exercise in futility, right? First, I don't think there's a consensus within the Democratic Party to actually proceed with the impeachment. And even if it happens, right, what would we look at in the best case scenario? War criminal Trump gets impeached, and then do you want Pence, who arguably is like more fanatical, more intelligent, more dangerous than Trump? What was accomplished if that happens, right? So what grounds are we going to impeach the guy on? That he had like some conversation with the troops in Ukraine? And like that is politics as we know it, right? Mm-hmm. And for instance, in terms of like impeachment, I would say that there was more grounds of impeaching Obama based on the fact that he collaborated with Daesh in Syria and Libya. So that is what is called high treason, right? Mm-hmm. That is much more dangerous than talking to some troops in Ukraine and whatnot. So impeaching really accomplishes nothing, in my opinion, right? Like, except some people are going to feel better because obviously Trump is the type of person that triggers reactions from people, mm-hmm. right? Like you feel one way or another, but you're not indifferent to the guy. So it will make some people feel better. But at the end of the day, if we don't impeach capitalism, neoliberalism, colonialism, and imperialism, nothing gets accomplished.
Well, see, and that's the thing, too. Like you mentioned Obama a second ago. He's not even dead, and the hagiography on him is amazing. I mean, I know grown-ups, and I'm in Austin. I'm very blue Austin. But it's all corporate liberals. I mean, they don't know it, and they get really mad when you say that. And they, I'm not a corporatist. Oh, yeah, you kind of are. If you can tell me with a straight face that, Hillary was really better than Trump, I mean, Trump's uglier, sure. I mean, and he is fucking with a lot of women's rights. That's something Hillary probably would not have allowed to stand. I mean, she would not have appointed a couple of Supreme Court assholes like that, or at least these big of assholes. But beyond that, still, she was steamed in, kept bombing Syria, kept bombing Libya. She took no responsibility. Libya was merely a mistake. It's a fucking crime, what she did, what Obama did. But yet, why is it that, I mean, I don't know the answer, but I may as well have you say it, right? But why is it that people can't, despite the facts, he took 2 wars to 7. Bush left us with 2 wars. Obama took them to 7. Why can't people acknowledge that, and what he did has been illegal? So why is he not a war criminal?
Yeah, for all intended purposes, I will argue that every U.S. president 1 to 45 qualifies under war criminal, right? Like we
Absolutely.
have like people that we worship, like Abraham Lincoln. It was like, oh yeah, the best president, la la la. And the guy basically conducted the largest mass execution of Native Americans. He conducted the most brutal ethnic cleansing campaigns against the Native American nation. People like Jimmy Carter that we consider like, oh, you're so good. He started the Taliban. He he supported the most vicious regimes in Central America, in the anti-communism fight. He sponsored the civil wars in Nicaragua, in Honduras, Guatemala, Salvador. So even the so-called good guys, in my opinion, qualify as war criminals, right? Mm-hmm. Now, why we lack that critical thinking, right? And I would say that is the fanatism of the people, right? Like this Democrat, Republican thing is really like my red team, my blue team. So you're talking to fanatics. Mm-hmm. Fanatics lack critical thinking skills, right? You're with your team, right or wrong. and then you're willing to overlook the same crimes that you criticize when the opposite team commits them, right? Mm-hmm. So Obama is one of these divisive figures, the other side of the coin of Trump, right? But when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, you get the same result, right? So you have Obama, number one. And I really hate to go this route, mm-hmm. because I hate Hitler analogies. But the last man to bomb 7 countries was Hitler, and then Obama. And that is something to point out, right? Yeah. Then there are like 2 versions about his deportation numbers. One version says that Obama deported more immigrants than any other president in the history of the United States. And the other version claims that he deported more than all presidents combined. Mm-hmm. So either one of them is really messed up, right? I think the numbers are close to 3.2 million. Mm-hmm. He started this concentration camp that now the Democrats are hypocritically complaining against and denouncing, like they started these concentration camps. They finance Al-Qaeda and Daesh in Syria and Libya. They smuggle like weapons to the drug cartels in Mexico, right? Like Operation Fast and Furious. They install a neo-Nazi junta in Ukraine, right? So here you're talking 10 times more drone attacks than George Bush, right? So he talked about like closing Guantanamo Bay within his first 100 days by signing an executive order. And he didn't do that. He had like majority in both houses of Congress. So it's not like Congress didn't want him to. He could have done anything in that regard, right? And not only he didn't close Guantanamo Bay, he made sure that it was funded for eternity. And he ended up like force-feeding the detainees. I hate that word because it's a euphemism, right?
Right.
He force-fed the detainees like during their hunger strike in Guantanamo. So once again, I always go back to this analogy of the great Malcolm X, which I believe is the brightest mind in the history of this United States. And then I'm a fan of David Henry Thoreau, right, who mm-hmm. actually went to jail for protesting the Mexican-American War, right? He thought that it was very unfair. But Malcolm X, going back to Malcolm X, he made the analogy of the wolf and the fox. He said, number one, there is no such thing as the Democrats and Republicans. That's right. Why not? Because they cross lines all the time to vote with each other, right? Mm-hmm. And we saw the Bushes, they were supporting Hillary Clinton campaign. Mm-hmm. When George Bush won, there was a lot of Democrats voting Republican in Florida. So they cross lines all the time. He said, there's no Republicans, there are no Democrats. What you have are conservatives and liberals. And then he said, the white liberal is the most dangerous thing in the Western Hemisphere. And he said, don't get me wrong. The conservative is not friend of the Negro, but he looks like a wolf. Right. You look at the conservative and you know it's a wolf and you know how to act accordingly. When you look at the liberal looks like a fox, that comes and smiles and shows you the teeth, and it's up to the same business as the wolf. It's easier that you fall prey of the fox than the wolf. And look at all the minorities in the United States. They always vote Democrat, right? Latinos, Arabs, Muslims, blacks. We vote Democrat, and these guys stick the knife in our back time after time after
all
time.
All the time. And then you see on the corporate media, the supposed left and right, and it's like this is the left and right argument on the corporate media, right? It's like the left is like, well, we should bomb Syria, and then the conservative is like, no, we should really bomb Syria. So the argument is, should we bomb Syria or really bomb Syria? That's it. And or should we just bomb Syria or have boots on the ground? And the left is like, no, we should just bomb Syria and not risk our soldiers. And then the right guy's like, no, we need to put boots on the ground and make a stay. That's their argument. The people consider Thomas Friedman a liberal, right? The guy's a fucking right-wing knothead. He's a Nazi. But that's the left and right argument in this country. We have this one big money party with these two wings, and you make a good point. I mean, I wanted to again, with the hypocrisy, I wanted to kind of jump back to the impeachment thing, for example. Like Nancy Pelosi refused to impeach Trump, right? And she famously refused to impeach George Bush for war crimes after it was proven that him and Cheney lied about the wars. And the reason she did that was because then she would be complicit and her record would come out because she approved torture. She signed off on it. She didn't say anything about it. She knew what was going on. And so now you have this impeachment inquiry because why? Because he was going to investigate Biden? He asked the Ukrainian government to investigate Biden. That's the big crime, not his emoluments issues, not his real crimes. Right? They spent 3 years on Russiagate, not going into anything else that he did that was a real crime. right? And so again, it's kind of like the Ukrainian government, for example, in the Obama administration. And this is impeachable, right? So Biden and Obama went to the Ukrainian government and basically blackmailed them to withhold $1 billion of military aid unless they fired the prosecutor who incidentally was investigating the company that Hunter Biden sat on the board of.
Yeah.
So why is that ignored and swept under the rug? And they're going to choose to impeach Trump on this crap?
Precisely, yeah. And when earlier you were using the term left, right, to describe probably the Democrats, the liberals here, and I always believe that there's no such thing as left in the United States, or well, maybe there is, but you have to go into the parties of socialism, right? Like socialist parties, that would be the closest to left, because in other nations, you have a wide spectrum of political parties, right? That go from communist parties, to the most neoliberal parties. Like even, I'm from Mexico, even the example of Mexico, right? We have communist party that has been there forever. And then we have like neoliberal parties, and we have like ultra-religious parties. So all the colors are represented in the spectrum. In the United States, basically you have right and far right, right? It's like the differences between Democrats and Republicans are as significant as the differences between Corona Extra and Corona Light. Both of them are right-wingers. Mm-hmm. Both of them are neoliberals. They represent the same agenda. They serve the same masters. Mm-hmm. So it's deceitful, right? It's just like this good cop versus bad cop type of game in which we are the victims of this game. And it's true. Like sometimes there's all these distractions. Like this situation with Ukraine reminds me a little bit of those Hillary's emails, right? Like, okay, right now the issue should be Biden and all the illegal activities he incurred. We should be looking again at the coup d'etat they orchestrated in Ukraine to install a neo-Nazi junta and neo-Nazi government.
That's right.
That is alarming, which incidentally, they are armed by Israel. That is so hilarious and ironic. Israel is sending weapons to Nazis. It's unbelievable. So here you have...
That's like a Mel Brooks joke. Who, by the way, is so not politically correct. He would put that in a movie if he was still making movies. I could just see it now. Exactly. They're Nazis. You can't sell them weapons. But listen, it's like
Exactly. So the real issue should be here, like the activities that Biden and his son conducted in Ukraine. That is what we should really be looking at. Like, okay, if Trump talks to their guy, yeah, that's politics as usual. You're always trying to get dirt from your adversaries and whatnot. I am not concerned about that. I am concerned about the truth coming out. Mm-hmm. And it's the same with the Hillary emails. I don't care whether it was a leak or whether it was a hack. I don't care. I want this woman prosecuted for the crimes and the content of those emails. But the content of those emails are almost irrelevant for the masses because, no, she was hacked. Well, was she hacked? But the content is accurate? They wouldn't argue that.
Well, see, and this is what's so infuriating about that. To this day, I mean, people, I'm in Austin. Again, I got a lot of friends out here that, almost all of them are blue. And it's the same running argument. I mean, I go out a couple nights a week. There's this bar by my house. We hang out. We just like cheers. We just talk shit. And I'm the odd man out. They buy what Rachel Madcow says, hook, line, and sinker. And it's like, so when you say, well, wait, why aren't you discussing the content in the emails? The perpetrators are admitting by their own hand what they do. Yeah. They're admitting Hillary's weakness with the Russians, which is like, why? Okay, let's just go ahead and put it on Trump. Right? They admit that she's not likable. They admit that she admits I have a public position and a private position. They admit cheating Bernie Sanders. They admit it. Yeah. Tom Perez is talking about sticking a knife in his back. It's like, that's what you said. So who cares? It's like Mitch McConnell can knock on my door and say, hey, your house is on fire. I'm not gonna spit in his face and go, fuck you, Mitch McConnell. I hate you. Thank you, Mitch McConnell. You're an asshole, but thank you for telling me my house is on fire. Oh, no problem. I'm going to go back to screwing you some more and making another $100 million. And he runs away. But that level of you said it a second ago, fanatics lack critical thinking skills. That level of infantilism, which is just mired in American exceptionalism, right? Is what really drives me batshit crazy. It really, really does. And you talked about Malcolm X a second ago, and I love him, and I'm also a big James Baldwin fan. And
Yes.
and he famously said that the challenge with the United States is we're psychotic. And we're psychotic because we cannot reconcile our ideals with our sins.
Yeah.
Right? We have these great ideas.
I didn't know that quote, but it's 100% accurate.
Yeah. And it's like, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No. I was just thinking when you were talking about Sanders earlier on, right? So it's one of the main subjects for the Democrats and the liberals, like the left and right. They talk about we have to dismantle white supremacy. That, yeah, by all means, that sounds good. However, they love to blame the black community for the outcome of the elections, the Latino community for the outcome of the elections, rather than recognizing that is the Electoral College, the one that decides who gets there, and that war criminal Hillary Clinton had 3 million more votes than war criminal Trump, right? But they prefer to blame the little guy all the time. Had they, like in every single poll, I am not Bernie Sanders fan, you know that, but in every single poll, Bernie Sanders led Trump by 10 points.
Sure.
So there is no one to blame for Donald Trump except the corrupt Democrats.
Oh, but they will never accept responsibility for that. I mean, they do the finger wagging bullshit. And you got to somebody, whether it's online or in person, when they start like attacking you and calling you names, right? Oh, go be a big baby. Go vote for that third party. Now's not the time to get into philosophical arguments. Okay, now we got to
serious.
Yeah, now we got to be serious, man. Really? So you vote for? Okay, so do you honestly think that people that are green or seriously like socialist or left are going to show up to vote for Hillary Clinton?
Mm-hmm.
It's like those people that 60% of Jill Stein voters in the polls, 60% of Jill Stein voters said they weren't going to vote at all if she wasn't on the ballot.
Yeah.
Okay. So why am I expected? And this is the other thing the Democrats failed to do that the Republicans do seem to understand. I don't owe you my vote.
Correct.
I don't owe it to you. You got to come get it.
Correct.
And the blacks and the Latinos who didn't vote for her, they didn't vote for her because they were screwed between Bush and Obama. And she comes out and instead of saying, well, listen, we got some problems. We got to fix this. She's like, no. America's always been great. We're super duper. And didn't go to the red states that Trump was visiting 3 times a month. I mean, he worked his ass off. He was like Poison in the 80s. He was like, like flying all over Los Angeles and playing every shitty show they could get. That's why they became famous. And it's like, and Trump was like barnstorming, man. I mean, he was on that plane. He was everywhere. He was doing 30,000 seat halls everywhere, working his ass off. She refused to visit those states because those were states that were Anderson, Indiana, Scranton, Pennsylvania, Detroit, Michigan. Those are states and areas that were completely decimated by the neoliberal failure and Obama and Bush policies, especially in the previous 16 years. And she's going to sit there and say that everything is super duper and it's just that mean man Trump. Nobody bought it.
Yeah.
And as you said about Sanders, he did pull higher. And fool me once, shame on me. I'm not voting for him. If he gets the general, I might break down and vote for him because I'm not going to vote for Trump, and I would like to see him over Trump. But honestly, in the primaries, I'm probably not going to vote in the primaries. To be honest with you, and that is because he can sit there and say, okay, listen, when I'm president, I'm going to have free cake for everybody. Everyone's going to get free cake and college. Cake and college. We're going to give them free cake and free college and end these regime change wars. And white supremacists is bad. We don't like Nazis. They're bad. And everyone, but he's going to sheepdog like he did the fucking last time. He's going to sheepdog like Eugene McCarthy. When Bobby Kennedy got shot, this is the most famous, egregious sheepdogging. Bobby Kennedy gets shot after the California primary. Eugene McCarthy talks the delegates to go with him. And then he goes to the DNC convention and throws in his entire lot with Hubert Humphrey. Right? That was the most egregious example of sheepdogging that I can recall, up until Bernie Sanders. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. I think he's the of all sheepdogs, he's the most extraordinary. Yeah. Just look at the role is basically to keep like the progressives within the party, right, and then like drop out in the last minute when it's too late to change your party and whatnot. So you're like pretty much forced to vote for the nominee, right? But like as we know. Even the Republican Party is more democratic than the Democratic Party, right? Because why? Yeah. Like I think it was 1972, like George McGovern, right? Like like pro-peace candidate and Democratic, like won the nomination, and they make sure to instituted this kill switch, which is the Super Tuesdays and the Super Delegates. So basically, you're talking if Sanders wins, well, he is not going to win. He is not going to win because the nominee of the DNC gets handpicked. Is not selected by the people, but is handpicked by the corrupt oligarchy of the Democratic Party, right? So you have to, unless Bernie Sanders has 300 super delegates stashed in one of his pockets, he's not going to win. It's like the one that has all the super delegates is Biden, followed by Warren, and I think Sanders is third, but like he has like 1/3 of the super delegates that Biden has. So I think we're looking at a repeat of 2016, and I don't like to go into a speculation mode or
no, I know.
I am not like a Las Vegas old maker, but I can pretty much see the writing on the wall that it's going to be a rerun of 2016, right? So Bernie Sanders will draw up, and then he's going to endorse and campaign for Biden under the flag of "We must defeat Donald Trump." And then the followers who are like, "Yeah, he's right. We must defeat Donald Trump." So here you are. You were shipped, right?
Yeah.
And it's pretty much the likely scenario. It's a likely scenario that war criminal Trump may get reelected.
Oh,
so the
100%.
only question now is like, who they're going to blame, the Russians now, or they're going to pick a different nationality?
Well, here's the thing, and this is my prediction, and I bet about 900. My predictions are about 90% okay, because I usually kind of with the facts in front of me, like barring an accident or nuclear war, act of God. Usually, I'm pretty on point. When the DNC, because for example, the super delegates are on the second ballot, right? So if the nominee does not have the primary nominee does not have 51% of the vote among the primaries, then the super delegates get to vote in the second ballot, right? And most people don't know this. They look at the count, and Hillary took 27 states to 23, right? But that's not true, because superdelegates came into West Virginia, Minnesota, Michigan, and Hawaii. In fact, every county in West Virginia voted for Bernie Sanders. Every county.
Yeah.
And they superdelegated it to Hillary, okay? So that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. I'm talking about outright cheating. So these guys have already rigged the game, and everyone has to sign these loyalty oaths. I don't know where these people went to college, man, okay?
Yeah.
I remember I had a political science professor when I was like 19 talk to us about loyalty oaths with the Nazi Party, right?
Yeah.
So I didn't go to fancy schools. So if my non-fancy teacher is talking to us, where did you go to school? You went to Yale Law? You went to Harvard Law? And you think loyalty oaths are a good idea? And that's why Bernie can't say anything negative about the DNC or the process, because then he can't run. Right? If he bitches about the climate change debate that Tom Perez put the kibosh on, then he can't run.
Yeah. And it's funny you mentioned this, because when you're talking about these loyalty oaths, the person that came to mind was Cynthia McKinney, right, from Georgia. Yeah. She's probably like the last Democrat that I admire. And she mentioned, how like as soon as you get into any of the houses of Congress, you're immediately required by IPAC to sign your oath of loyalty, which is unbelievable, right?
Yeah. Absolutely, and that's the thing. It's like, this is where this bleeds. Like American exceptionalism. About a month or two ago, I had Danny Haifeng on, who wrote the book, co-wrote the book American Exceptionalism, American Innocence, and that was a great hour. That was a great hour. A lot of info, and that book is amazing. I finally finished it. It's a long book, but it's a good book, and he gets into. Him and Roberto Servant, they get into how American exceptionalism just seeps into everything. Like all this violence that we're recently seeing in the last 15 years or so, 20 years with the mass shootings and the rise in domestic violence and stuff like that. And it's not the rise in crime. Garden variety crime's not going up, right? Like robberies are down. Like crime is down, but violence is up. Right, so like mass shootings account for what percentage of murders in this country? Not a lot, but they're enough to shock your system, right? And so, but the fact that the rise in mass shootings comes from our imperialism overseas, because we see that without impunity, as a society, as a culture, as a collective, you see that without impunity, we're able to bomb the shit out of anybody. Obama can violate what the Congress voted against and go into Syria anyway after Congress said, no, you can't go into Syria. And what Democrats tell me when I say that, well, that's because it was a Republican Congress and they didn't like him. Okay. I'll give you that, but maybe that one time they're going, we were already in enough fucking wars, man. Like Let's not go into Syria, okay? Because the American people are not cool with Iraq and Afghanistan already. And y'all fucked up you already fucked up in Egypt, right? That's another thing. Like Mubarak, we put up with that fucker for 30 years until he became inconvenient to us.
Yeah, I was thinking about this American exceptionalism that you mentioned and these double standards we have, right? Like, okay, gun control, let's advocate for gun control domestically, but not internationally, right? Let's get more weapons or whatnot. Like recently, I read this headline, like Ocasio-Cortez saying something in the lines that, and I'm paraphrasing, that white supremacy was America's original sin, and it was a virus, right? That it was like a virus that spreads. So I agree with the concept. Yes, she is correct in that regard. The problem comes when Ocasio and all this progressive squad votes in favor of Donald Trump's overbloated military budget.
At 1.4,
right? So it's like, let's spread that virus that we claim to oppose.
Well, it's 1.4 trillion next time, by the way.
Pardon me?
The budget is now 1.4 trillion for next year.
Yes, or the same, right? When you're talking about, when you're talking with Bernie Sanders followers and they're like, yeah, we're socialists, this and that, and then you start addressing, hey, Sanders has voted in favor of 11 wars. He has come up in public saying that drones have done very good things. And then they go into imperialist mode and they're like, well, yeah, drones are helpful to keep our soldiers safe. It's like, that is the so-called left that I was telling you. The left doesn't exist here. It's a fleeting illusion.
Well, it's like, again, if you see them on TV, if you see the counterpoint, it's like, should we bomb Syria or should we really bomb Syria? Well, I think we should
really bomb it.
I think we should just bomb Syria. Well, that's because you're goddamn liberal. I think we should really bomb Syria. It's like,
it's like what you were saying earlier, right? Like you're telling me, like, no, I'm in Austin, so it's like definitely blue, and then look at me like in weird ways. Well, I'm in San Francisco, and it's the exact same thing, right? This is like a perennial stronghold of the liberals, right? And like, believe me, I don't know. I've been in this city for 20-something years. I don't know anybody that, like, in the open tells you I'm Republican or I vote Republican. I bet there are, but they're in the closet. They know better, right?
Oh, yeah.
So you're looking at this city, right, that has been run by the liberals from the beginning of time. And look at like the situation of the homeless situation here, right? Like we have about 15,000 people living in the streets. Mm-hmm. So here we are, like Gavin Newsom, who is now the governor of California. He was the mayor of San Francisco, and he's the one that instituted this criminalization of the poor, right? They called it quality of life offenses, which is a euphemism again, right? Basically, he instituted this law called sit or lie, in which any homeless person that is sitting or is lying on a sidewalk is breaking the law. Mm-hmm. In other words, the only way for them to be legal, not to break the law, would be by walking 24 hours a day, which is crazy, right? Mm-hmm. It's insane and it's not realistic. The other day, I'm in a coalition on homelessness, one of the nonprofits where I work. There was an older fellow that came, homeless fellow that came with a ticket, with a citation. Mm-hmm. And it's like, hey, I've got this citation. I don't even know what it is. Can you help me to pay it off or whatever? We look at it, and it was a ticket for $250 for, get this, eating a slice of pizza in a bus shelter. So that is everybody talks about how heinous the caste system is in India and whatnot. Of course, it's heinous, but no one is going to convince me that it's worse than the class system in the West. I was in the poorest states in India, and I see how the homeless are fed in the temples 3 times a day. They get to hang around there, and they sleep there. And then at night, the police watches after them, right? Mm-hmm. So yes, it's awful that there is a caste system, but it's worse. What I perceive here in San Francisco, the most affluent city in the United States, is worse. It's like the police comes and they rip their tents in the middle of rain season with knives. They make sure that they cannot use the tents anymore. They confiscate their belongings. So it's the criminalization of the poor. And this is a liberal stronghold, right? And in theory, they are the compassionates, the empathetic, the progressives. And the same thing with this hypocrisy. If London Breed, who is now the mayor of San Francisco, and once again, this is the other philosophy of the liberals that I oppose, the so-called identity politics, right? Because you look at the last 3 out of the last 4 mayors of San Francisco, they come from minority groups. Willie Brown, an African-American man, Ed Lee, Chinese man, and London Breed, the current mayor, who is African-American woman. Okay. all what they do is like sweep the homeless. Like, let's make sure to sweep them away and to criminalize them.
Right.
And all the liberals in San Francisco, they're like, yeah, that's what needs to be done. But now that Trump was here with Carson and talked about homelessness, and he's like, hey, let's criminalize them and let's do sweeps. Oh, then the liberals get outraged.
Right.
No, that's unacceptable.
Right. It's
only okay when we do it.
Right. See, and that's what's so simple-minded. It's in Austin about 2 months ago, and we did something, in my opinion, just as bad because it was a way for the city to wash their hands of the homeless problem we have here. Because I think we're smaller than San Francisco, but I think we have about 8,000 homeless people in this city. I might be wrong.
Wow.
6,000. It's a ton.
Wow.
And then in the last year, the tent villages like exploded under the bridges of 35, and I'll be out in downtown hanging out sometimes. And people are in town. They never. I've been living here 4.5 years. They never used to say this. Now people go, Jesus, what's up with the homeless, man? And what happened was. And in fact, our chief of police quit, if I'm not mistaken, and went to Houston because when Austin passed the law that it was legal to camp anywhere in town as long as you don't block a sidewalk or impede pedestrian traffic, recipe for disaster. Because now you have these tent cities popping up all over the place, and it was a way for the city to wash their hands of, say, for example, taking the Arch Center, which is the Austin Community Outreach, whatever they call it, for the Austin Resource Center for the Homeless, and which is in the middle of downtown, which is basically three meals a day in a cot, and which hardly any of the homeless people stay there because the homeless people that are on the street, as you pointed out on our show before, are not the people that have jobs. They're not the people that are sane enough to maybe get a motel and share it with 3 families to keep their crap together enough to go get another apartment or to go get to go live somewhere. They have problems, and these people have significant problems, and they're not getting any help. And rather than spend money to help them in a real way, they're just sleeping on grates and turn out into the street. And the city just thinks, well, if we don't have the cops assault them, then we're doing our thing and we're humanitarians. It's like, no, not really, because now they're exploding all over the place. Still with nowhere to go, still with no food, still panhandling, still assaulting people, some of them, by the way. And so you're not doing anything to help these people. And it's that, but as soon as, if Trump decided to make that law, then yeah, the liberals would freak out. But, or if Governor Abbott made that a state law, then the liberals would freak out. But because, our city council and our liberal mayor passed it, then it's okay, and it's a mess. And it's just completely, it takes the responsibility off the corporations. Facebook just put their second building here. Google has a third building here. Indeed has 6 buildings here. Yeah. Samsung just put in a third facility. Their second facility is actually a manufacturing facility. So we actually have some good manufacturing jobs out of Samsung here. But they put in a third building. So we have tech growing out of our ass in Austin. Because there's no state income tax. It's cheaper to live here and for now. And they're getting incentives. The governor and the mayor are giving these companies incentives up the rear end, not unlike Amazon, to come to town and do business here. And so they're creating more jobs and blah, 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 blah. But, they're also displacing a lot of people. And then the folks that do need help, they will never, they will not never, but they're not in a position to help themselves. And we did them no favors by washing our hands of them. Well, we're not assaulting you anymore. You guys can camp freely. Like, all right.
Yeah, I didn't know the homeless population in Austin was so big, but it doesn't surprise me. It's usually I would say conservatives tend to manipulate that data and say like, oh, it only happens in democratic states, because we have San Francisco and Los Angeles, of course, that is super huge. But that is an urban myth, because the data shows that that this is a nationwide problem. Mm-hmm. It is beyond red and blue. This is a nationwide problem, and there are about probably 2 million people living in the streets of these United States. And what is really tragic is that about 1/3 of them are children. So here we see, in the tip of the iceberg, all these homeless are dysfunctional and perhaps on drugs or whatnot. But that is the tip of the iceberg. Underneath, there's a huge iceberg. And literally, the fastest growing sector of the homeless population are families, mm-hmm. and many of them working families.
That's right.
So literally, they could pass next to you, and you couldn't tell they're homeless.
Right.
But they are.
See, and those people that you talk about, you're right, we wouldn't know because they at least have their faculties together If it's a single guy, maybe he's living in his car with a gym membership so he can take a shower before he goes to work at McDonald's, right? Or if it's a couple of families in a motel, like you work with these people, So that is, that's not even who I'm necessarily talking about. The folks that end up on the street, the folks that end up abused, missing teeth, they're offering to wash a window on the freeway or whatever. Those folks need real help. And saying that they're lazy or whatever. About a year ago, I was coming home from a show one night, and some homeless guy, I didn't even see him crossing the street. I just was not even paying attention. All of a sudden, I felt my car get completely rocked. Like I heard a thunk. I heard a thunk, and this guy, I got out, and I was pissed, because. People go, oh, gee, it's like that Bill Burr joke. But you go from 0 to 100 so easily. No, you don't understand. I idle at 75. Okay, so so it's easy for me to go to 100. So I jump out of the car, immediately ready to, encounter this person, and within seconds, my heart rate went back down to 0. I just sort of looked at the guy and I just shrugged my shoulders like I got nothing.
Wow.
He was howling at the moon. He was just screaming at God. He was out of his mind. And he punched my car. And maybe he thought I was a Martian. I don't know what happened, but there was no engaging this guy. There was this poor bastard. No shoes, no nothing. Just dirty T-shirt. Just and why is this guy in the street? Why is this guy not somewhere getting care? He's not well. He's not well. And you go to the Arch Center on 7th and Red River, 7th and Nietzsche's. In downtown before the 35 freeway, and it's this gigantic shelter called the Arch Center. And it's just, when I first moved here, I thought it was a Greyhound station. I go, oh, gee, upon closer, no, it's homeless people sitting on the sidewalk, waiting to get in if they can. And even if they can get in, it's not like the police are working there. It's a couple of security guards who can give a crap if they hear somebody screaming in the middle of the night being abused, getting their stuff stolen. These people aren't well. These aren't the people that you work with, right? The people you work with, they have their faculties together. They have jobs.
Yeah. I was thinking about once again the hypocrisy of the liberals when it comes to this the subject of homelessness, right? So recently, I think maybe 3-4 days ago, in the streets of the Mission District in San Francisco, suddenly and mysteriously, you see huge boulders in areas where the homeless people sleep, right?
Mm-hmm.
To prevent them from sleeping on the street. And here comes one of the supervisors of San Francisco, Rafael Mendelson, who in theory is super progressive. He identifies as LGBTQ, the typical liberal that I cannot get any more progressive than me. And he said, oh, what a creative solution. He was praising this as a solution for homelessness. And what really worries me is when I start seeing all these acts of hatred towards the homeless population,
yes,
and the poor, right? You see, it was famous in San Francisco about a year ago or something like that. There's a street camera, right, and just catches this guy a techie on suit and tie, carrying a suitcase, talking on his phone, and he's walking on the street, and he sees a homeless person sleeping, and goes back, takes a few steps back, and kicks him a couple of times really fucking hard, and then you see now they're burning all these encampments they're burning them, they're just, it's just hatred to the poor, because usually we talk about all this hatred, racism and xenophobia and whatnot, but there is this catedrátic, a teacher from the University of Valencia in Spain, her name is Adela Cortina, and she created a new term. She coined a new term that is called aporophobia, that it comes from Greek, right? Like poros, poor,
mm-hmm.
and then the phobia, right? So it's basically hatred towards the poor, which is different to racism or xenophobia, right? Because if the Saudis come, it doesn't matter that they're foreigners. It doesn't matter that they're dark-skinned. We're going to kiss their butt. But if you are a poor person, that's where the hatred lies. There's a lot of people that really hate the poor.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, that's why, when you look at you look at class in this country, and we have a lot, we have a lot of minorities getting into the 1 in 10%. Obama, a good example. He's wealthy. No one, like you said, they're going to kiss his ass because he's got money, right? And that's the thing that it seems to me that American exceptionalism is quick to dehumanize regardless of what color they are. It's all about the other and money. And you know what I mean? And it's just like, you know, not necessarily switching gears, but I'm just kind of thinking out loud. This is my concern, for example, and Chris Hedges makes this point, is, you know, with Antifa, to a degree, Black Lives Matter, but mostly like with Antifa, is they're kind of no different. If you really want to think about it in sinister terms, they're kind of no different than the brown shirts in the Weimar Republic, right? Because all you need for Antifa, and I don't think, and I honestly think Chris Hedges has said this, and so I agree with him. I don't think Antifa is a wholly organic organization. I would not be surprised if a FOIA, if a Freedom of Information Act came out like 10 years from now, and we saw Antifa as a CIA directive.
Yeah.
Right. You get a bunch of not smart people led by a couple of really smart CIA agents, and you get them to loot and do all this, do all this stuff, protest violently. And then what ends up happening is it gives the state a reason to exert more control. We already have a militarized police force pretty much in every city in the United States. So now it gives us an excuse to get them more tanks and get them more stuff, and to, erode more and more of our rights, because we seem to want to willingly give those away for the illusion of safety.
Yeah. I've always been very suspicious about Antifa. Like, I'm a rebel and whatnot, but for some reason these guys don't sit well with me, because exactly, they don't feel organic, legit in this regard, right? Like, in theory, it's a non-organized group that fights fascism, right? So then we have to identify who is the fascist and what it means, right? So punching a random racist guy in the face is not going to finish with an ideology, right? What is fascism? Okay, I can argue that every action conducted by Republicans, Democrats, or Zionists is fascism. But they don't go to IPAC conventions and hit the Zionists in their face. Well, if they were, in real terms, if they were anti-fascists, they would go and do that. But no, they always get like some random white guy, ignorant guy in the street and like punch him in the face and like, oh yeah, that's going to address the problem. No, if anything, it's just like inflammates the problem, right? And it's like exactly what we're seeing, more and more techniques used by the state to keep dividing. And they sure succeeding at it. It's a technique that has worked since Julius Caesar time, right? Like divide and conquer keeps working. It keeps working.
Well, and it's kind of like, all these, we had recently, these thousands and thousands of people show up to protest the climate. And, like this Greta chick is, I'm not going to beat up on her or whatever, because she's a kid. I'm serious. Like when I see adults, they went after that David Allen Hogg or whatever his name was, the Florida gun guy. Oh yeah. And well, he didn't get into some of his colleges. Well, go fuck yourself. Like, what were you doing at 17? I mean, I wasn't doing that. I was hanging out with my buddies and working at an ice cream store. And I ran track in high school, and all I really cared about was my girlfriend's breasts. I wasn't like, thinking about the bigger picture and, and getting in front of thousands of people and addressing them. And, I wasn't doing that. So, yay them. I wasn't even student body president. Right? So like, so I'm not going to beat up on this chick. It's just, but the thing that I noticed is the same thing with the pussy hat ladies. It's just it's acceptable. It's not because when it's real protest about a real issue, Occupy or the Dapple thing, Obama sent the cops in there to crack heads and hose them down and do all that crap, like real riot stuff. But when it's this stuff, it's like, okay, yeah, that's cool. Oh, you're protesting. You don't like Trump, and you're wearing a hat that's a vagina. Okay, that's cool. Same thing with this. I mean, Greta's fist bumping. First of all, I don't blame her for fist bumping the president. She's probably too young to know. That he's the guy who fracked the fuck out of the United States, for example, because she was like 9, 7 years ago. So, okay, I get that. But people that our age, grown-ups, that buy into this, that's what disturbs me.
We're too gullible and too hungry for hope. That's what's happening, right? So first, talking about this issue, it is important to highlight, right, that we're not criticizing a child, a minor. Like we cannot do that, but rather we're like, being suspicious and exercising critical thinking. And if any, the criticism is geared towards the parents, the foundations, and groups of special interest behind her. That's where the question are. Like, so this is basically the Al Gore groups, right? Like trying to sell green energy. and make profit out of it. Let's face it, right? Like the power never concedes itself. So you're not going to get all the microphones. You're not going to get all the spotlights. You're not going to get a millionaire's yacht to go from, Europe to the United States if, in fact, you represent a threat to the system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? The feeling I have is that, of course, this minor is being used, and they pick these characters by design, right? Because they know, like, oh, okay, who's going to criticize a child? If you do that, you're going to be accused of being an asshole, right? So they pick, like, oh, and on top of that, she has some disabilities. How dare you?
Yeah.
Paraphrase it, right? Like, how dare you? So they pick something like that some people like this by design. But it's like, then you just have to scratch the surface. Okay, cute girl, and the message is all fine, right? The message is like, hey, our planet is in despair, like, which is true. That is accurate message, right? But that is nothing new. That is nothing that we didn't know. But when you scratch the surface, you're like, okay, who is behind? Like, why, like, a random kid is gonna all of a sudden, like, speak in Davos, the Forum for Millionaires in the UN? Who has access to the UN? Like, random people. Like, it doesn't happen. Mm-hmm. And then, like, immediately the One Foundation, read Bill Gates, Bono, like all these suspicious people, right? Like, behind her. And then you have access to people like Justin Trudeau, Schwarzenegger. Like, that doesn't happen if there is not, like, an agenda behind.
That's right.
So it's we were talking about it earlier, like, like that wouldn't happen to Khamenei, right? Like, from Palestine, who is like fighting the Zionists. Like, they will never give her the cameras and the spotlights and interviews and Vogue covers or anything like that.
You're not going to see her fist bumping Bernie, right?
No, exactly. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Exactly. Yeah. And once again, just to clarify, and avoid any misunderstanding, the criticism is not towards the minor. It's just towards the hidden agenda there. And we cannot be this gullible and this Pollyanna and to think that a few random rallies and marches are going to solve this problem. The only way to solve this problem is to completely dismantle the capitalist system, which is not going to happen. It's not going to happen by our means. If it happens, it's going to happen by means of implosion. Right? Like the same with Empire or same with Israel. It will be implosion. Yeah. We're not going to do it. But certainly a rally is probably going to create more pollution than solve the problem.
Well, and that's the thing, though. I think again, not to, because I'm not beating up on the kid either, but I think what the powers that be do is use this kid to placate the idiots.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're like, oh my God, she is making a change. Look, they had a rally. And American people have a short memory, but corporations they never forget. Corporations never forget. All right, and so like seriously, like you can rally up the ass all you want. The only way I used to know somebody a while ago, gosh, a long time ago now. And this documentary I don't think it ever saw the light of day. And anyway, I went to the screening. I was still living in LA. And she originally started out to make a documentary on the evils of animal testing. Right. But what ended up happening was she made a documentary on the protest groups that got smart. And instead of protesting Lawrence Livermore Labs, right, they found the house of the president of Bank of America and went to his house and protested on his streets with pictures of what happens with these animals, right?
Yeah. And
all of a sudden, the banks where the protests occurred got pulled their business dealings with said labs, right? And it was a phenomenal strategy, and the documentary was great because it was just like, wow. I thought, okay, I see a bunch of people protesting, and they had these hidden cameras, and I'm watching them punch a beagle, and I'm going to be all sad, okay. But it was like, and they did have that stuff in there. But the point of the documentary was these people that got smart and how they did the digging and found the banks and the savings and loans that dealt with these companies, these labs, and how they got their funding pulled, or if it was a company that wrote them a grant, right? So they didn't protest the company. They got the address of the CEO or the CFO, and they went to their house, and their neighbors were like, "What the fuck is this?" And you got like 300 people on the street with signs and screaming, and that did it. So short of that, which I don't see happening in this climate, I think what you're going to have is it is going to be an implosion. Not unlike the Democrats imploding. I think if when they pull, I don't think I finished my point. But when they pull again in 2020, what they did in 2016, they're going to be the Whig Party. They are going to be the party that is solely funded by corporations, and it's going to be so obvious that third parties, in my opinion, are going to actually start to see the light of day because no one is going to take the Democrats seriously anymore after this. It's a pathetic joke. And anybody with a brain who's excited about the impeachment, when I have friends, and I have friends that are, I'm like, okay, so what happens when you don't get the 67 senators to vote? Oh, well, it doesn't matter.
Exactly.
There's going to be an asterisk by his name. Yeah, because it really hurt Bill Clinton to have an asterisk by his name, right?
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
When you talk about Andrew Johnson, do you talk about his impeachment? Nobody. You know, if you say how many presidents were impeached, most people will say Nixon, even though he resigned before he was before the inquiry. If they didn't impeach him, it was going to be an inquiry.
Yeah.
Right, and he resigned before the inquiry because he knew that it was going to be it wasn't going to be a day because of the tapes and.
Yeah.
But again,
a lot of evidence.
Right, but again, why did they impeach Nixon? Did they impeach Nixon for Cambodia? Did they impeach Nixon for Laos? Did they impeach Nixon for escalating further what Johnson did in Vietnam?
No.
No, they didn't. They
for the wrong reasons.
Yeah, they impeached him because he went after the fucking elite. He broke into the Democratic National Committee's headquarters. That's why. Right?
I agree 100%. Yeah. Same about Bill Clinton, right? Like he wasn't impeached because he used like chemical weapons in Yugoslavia, like enriched depleted uranium and whatnot. No, it was because some sex act with some intern in the White House.
Well, see,
so it's always for the wrong reason.
It's always for the wrong reason. But here's the thing, because this is a correction I really have enjoyed making for the last 20 years. He wasn't impeached for a blowjob. Blowjobs aren't illegal, even if you cheat on your wife. Okay, this is his arrogance. He was impeached for perjury because he sat in testimony as an attorney, by the way, thinking that a fellow attorney wasn't going to already ask questions that he had the answers to. That's like law 101. That's like litigation 101. You never go in there and hunt for elephant in your underwear. You don't ask questions you don't already know the answer to. So when Ken Starr's asking him about Monica Lewinsky, he said, I don't know who she is. And, you know, little do they know that Ken Starr has tapes of Linda Tripp, you know, talking to Monica Lewinsky, who's distraught over her breakup with Bill Clinton. And this psychotic saved the dress that had sperm on it because she was crazy. Evidence up the ass. And Bill Clinton's like, no, I did not have sex with that woman. Don't know who she is. I swear to God. You know?
Yeah.
And you're like, you know, and here's the thing. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall. Because I would have told him, listen, he's a lawyer. He's a smart guy. He might be a Republican, but he's a smart Republican, okay? So you go on Oprah, you hold your wife's hand for 3 minutes, you cry, you do the Jimmy Swaggart thing. I have sinned before you, I'm sorry. And then you go home and you finish being president and you don't get in trouble, okay? No one's going to remember this, but you're going to get impeached if you fucking lie in court. People don't understand that an average of 2,000 people serve time for perjury alone every year in the United States. It's about an average of 2,000 people out of our prison population are there for just perjury. And the example I like to use, we got some time left here, but the example I like to use, you remember the rapper Little Kim?
Yeah.
Okay. She did 19 months in jail for perjury. Wow. She was at a nightclub with her entourage, and there was a shooting. And they all bolted out the back door. Well, she was subpoenaed. And because supposedly she knew one of the people, and she didn't. And so but she was subpoenaed, testified in a grand jury hearing that she was not there. And they had film that she was there. So for that one mistake, lying under oath about something that she would not have gone to jail. She was just going to be a witness, but she didn't want any trouble from these people. So anyway, long story short, she did 19 months in prison. Destroyed her career. I mean, she wasn't like T.I. She couldn't make a record from jail, I guess. But her career was over. So she went to jail for 19 months for what Clinton did. Okay? So... But I agree with you. To your point, the reason they went after him wasn't for his war crimes. It wasn't for, gutting the welfare system. It wasn't for, passing the Communications Act, which I can argue is a conspiracy that had to have some kickbacks involved. I mean, there's all these things there, but they impeach him for you go after the elites. When did this country finally get pissy at Saudi Arabia? When they killed a Washington Post reporter.
Yeah.
Fuck 9/11. Fuck 9/11. Yeah, 17 of them were Saudis. Fuck 9/11. Fuck Yemen. They killed that guy and cut him up and fed him to the poor. Okay, that's your big. I mean, it was horrible what they did. Make no mistake. But you guys had to wait for that to happen before you finally got mad at the Saudis and decided to try to stop selling them the weapons, which we didn't do.
No.
In fact, we're making smart bombs there now.
Yeah, exactly. Making bombs in there. Yeah, no, it's true. By the way, I just wanted to point out that you're really gifted at imitating voices of like all these characters, from Clinton to Sanders and whatnot. You're really good at that.
Well, it's also why I'm single. So apparently the ladies don't find that too sexy. So.
Oh, okay, all right.
But I'd rather live with me and my voices than some girl that doesn't understand me. So I talk to myself. Me and Bernie talk all the time. We don't agree. No, I'm not going to sheepdog you, son of a bitch. Let me tell you something else.
Yeah, you have a gift there.
Yeah, well, I thank you. But that's the thing. That hypocrisy that you talked about is, it's just endemic to the challenges that we have. And we're so easy. You said gullible for hope a second ago. We're so easily placated, right? That's what makes it so. That's what makes it so tough that we just don't. It's like we refuse to see our side as wrong, and there's no sides here. It's one big money party, and with two wings, and the one wing likes gays and doesn't like guns, and the other wing doesn't like gays and likes guns, and that's it. And they take money from the same fucking guys. Ocasio-Cortez and that squad bullshit. That's a good example of that.
Absolutely, I think you're right. Right, you touch on all the differences. Like they're gonna have the same agenda, the same founders, the same masters, and the differences between one and the other is gonna pretty much boil down to LGBTQ rights. Abortion and guns. I think that's about that. Yeah,
that's the only real. And not that those things aren't serious, but those are cosmetic differences.
They are serious. Yes, exactly. But it's like when you look at what they share in common. So it's like all these endless wars for profit, overthrowing democratically elected governments, mass incarcerations, institutional racism, mass deportations, private, like the violation to our privacy and our liberties. Criminalizing protests, basically protecting the fossil fuel mafia, all the corporations, all the super PACs and whatnot, Monsanto's, Big Pharma. They share the same agenda and they serve the same masters, and the difference are just these 3 or 4 elements that we've identified.
Right. Well, man.
So it's like. No, really quickly, just to paraphrase, like Jill Stein says something like that. It's we can argue about whether or not there's difference between these two parties. They may be different, but the difference is not enough to save our lives. That's the way she phrased it, and I agree with that.
I agree with her wholeheartedly.
Differences, but not enough to save our lives.
Well, it's like. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. It's like Elizabeth Warren saying that we need to make the military more green. I'm like. Okay. Danny Haiphong has this great quote in his book. He said saying to make the military more green is like complaining about the mafia for their ethnocentric hiring practices.
This sounds like a joke, but it's actually true, right? Like I come from Mexico City. Mexico City has like 22 million people, something like that. It's insane, right? So about the traffic and the smog and all that, right? Mm-hmm. So at one point, like some mayor of Mexico City decided that the solution for it, we have a lot of taxis, right? Like a lot of cabs that usually were like Volkswagen Bugs back then. So the solution was to paint them green. That's really going to address the pollution. So they were all the taxis were green. Like, oh, okay, now I feel the difference.
Yeah, I feel my lungs are better. I get it.
Yeah.
God, yeah. All right, man. Well, hey, listen, we're about out of time.
Thank you, Abe.
We got to wrap up. Yeah, this has been a blast as always, man. Thank you for coming on, folks. Our guest has been Raúl Fernández-Berriozábal, and again. Big time homeless advocate in the San Francisco area. He works with several nonprofits and works with people on a hands-on basis to, help them, get on with their lives. He's been a real activist. He's been in Nicaragua. He's been in Egypt. You name it. The guy's been all over the place, and he's just a wealth of information and an all-around good guy. Thank you so much for coming on, man.
I really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure. Thanks again.
Thank you, man. And as always, folks, you can always visit patreon.com/thebittertruth. And if this stuff makes you uncomfortable, it's supposed to. Sleep tight.